Okay, I think the video is live at the moment. We just need a second to double check. But in the meantime, since we're recording anyway, I would love to welcome you. Welcome the speakers and also the Coffee Tables team. My name is Razan Ismail. I'm your host and moderator for today. I'm the CEO at Human Connectors. I'm the founder of Association Qudwa, and I'll be here with you today to kind of deliver this conversation, this very important conversation about climate change. I want to give firstly the word to Anila Noor, who's the founder and director of Human Connectors, and she's also the one who started this initiative on CoFe Table, which is Feminist Leadership for Climate Change. Anila, thank you so much for being here with us today. I really would love to hear from you, just the motivations and how did this initiative actually start. I'll try to share some information, but in the meantime, while you're presenting, I'll also check if everything's okay with the live. So I'll leave the word with you.
Thank you, Rosanna, and hi everyone who is watching us on Facebook or recording on YouTube. Myself, I'm originally from Pakistan and living in Netherlands, and the initiative we just started from last year, actually, when I attended COP27 in Egypt in Sharm el-Sheikh. And there we realizes how still it is a big gap, which is not working for more inclusive reality, and how we can bring the voices of community which is disconnected when it's come to discussion as such. COP, which is very much, and climate change or climate impact is for all of us, and we as a woman, especially women in on the move, women living in a poor reality, living in a poor countries, we are at the forefront who's really in danger, and there's no other world. If we are not combining our efforts, if we are not creating solidarity, if we are not working together, we will lose this world, which is all of us. And this is our right to understand and to make a decision what is required to make a change. That's why when we had COVID, we released our approach, Leading Resilience. So Leading Resilience is an approach where we come together and we discover how we define what is problem according to us as a woman of color, as a migrant, as a refugee, as a stateless person, as a person who is really living in a non-privileged communities. What is required, how we're defining what we need, and what's the solution we want, which will and should work for us, by us. We don't want to be a active, non-active person in this policy discussion. We want to be active. We want to have a meaningful participation, and also not only access at the table, but also influence the so far decision which is required to be did. That's why coping together, growing together was our amazing successful project. And by the influence of this and being inspired of this, we have gather our amazing network. And this network we have so far Global Refugee-led Network, which is our mother organization, who's helping and creating knowledge on the global compact of refugees, who have bringing and advocating for meaningful participation. We have SEEK, Amreen Salim, she's here, she will define it more. So SEEK is one of our research institution who is taking the lead, helping us to to put a policy brief, but we want to put in the COP28, why we need it, and the recommendation. And SEEK also have helping us to navigate the context when it's come to research. We have Sea Change. Sea Change is one of the main actor who is advocating for 50 plus women on the seat when it's come to delegation of refugees. Delegation of representative who are coming to COP. They should have 50% of women in their delegation when we are talking about women participation, gender equality, and inclusion. We have so many other partners. As Razan said, she's trying to find out to share the screen. I don't know if I really want to showcase few main actors who are really partnering with us, and they are very much coming from the ground. Like we have our partners from Bangladesh, from Nigeria, from Uganda, from Pakistan, from China, from Netherlands, obviously. So these all are actors who are really community-based. We really want to define how we are defining what is recycling, how we are defining what is renaming this recycling, what is needed when it's come to climate change, what is come to loss and damage, what is loss and damage. And we have at the panel who will define what we learned from the COP history, what's happening in the communities, different contexts, like MENA context, like Latin America, like South Asia, and why we as a community-led organization, we have a say and we should have the power to define when it's come to systematic change. Thank you, Razan, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Anila. I just want to say that the introduction was not actually live, unfortunately, but fortunately we did record it, so hopefully we'll be able to share it on YouTube later. So thank you so much for the intro. I think it's a very, very timely conversation at the moment. And like you said, you know, who decides what to recycle, even who decides what kind of actions in specific contexts. These recommendations are not even actually applicable. So how can we actually include that? And definitely when it comes to, you know, feminist leadership and the gender perspective as well, how can we even include that within our actions for the next, I don't know, few years? So also we welcome Sefu. Thank you so much, Sefu, for joining us. I want to now actually invite Ambreen Salim from SEEK to also introduce the initiative. The SEEK is actually one of the also starters of the initiative, and would love to hear from you as well on the research side. If you have any facts and figures to share with us, actually, to set up the conversation for today.
Thank you, Razan, and thank you, Anila, for sharing why we started it. And I would also briefly share and build on this why we have started the initiative, the co-creating feminist leadership for climate justice, why it is necessary, and why New Women Connectors, SEEK, and the partners want to pursue it. So according to the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, 21.5 million people worldwide on average are displaced each year by the natural disasters. And 143 million people are projected to be displaced over the course of next 30 years. Imagine 143 million people as a result of rising seas, droughts, scorching temperatures, and other climate catastrophes. The world has yet to formally acknowledge climate migrants or devise methods for identifying their needs and provide assistance to them. And this is one of the agenda items on our advocacy plan for COP28 in November. Well, what is climate justice? What does it mean for us? You know, climate justice means linking human rights with development and the climate action. It means having a people-centered approach to climate action. And this entails ensuring representation, inclusion, and protection of the rights of those most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And for us, this means climate change-induced displacement and the people who are displaced because of the reasons arising out of climate change. Whereas the UNEP outlines it as climate justice is used for framing global warming as an ethical and political issue, rather than one that is purely environmental or physical in nature. This is done by relating the effects of climate change to the concept of justice, particularly environmental justice and social justice, and by examining issues such as equality, human rights, collective rights, and the historical responsibilities for climate. And I really liked the quote by Mary Robinson, the 7th President of Ireland, as she aptly states, and I quote, climate justice insists on a shift from a discourse on greenhouse gases and melting ice caps into a civil rights movement with peoples and communities most vulnerable to climate impact at its heart. And SEEK and New Women Connectors and maybe some other of our partners as well, we work with these most vulnerable communities, the migrants and refugees. And what is required to address these challenges, we discussed and with our community members, and we found that feminist leadership, and importantly, inclusive and diverse feminist leadership, is key to sustained global development as the world continues to confront urgent challenges from the COVID-19 pandemic to climate change. In this way, we ask why feminist leadership is important for climate justice. And Christina Figueres, from the former Executive Secretary of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, states, and I quote, "Women are disproportionately affected by climate change impacts, such as droughts, floods, and other extreme weather events. They also have a critical role in combating climate change, but need to be better represented at all levels of decision-making. Empowering women will be a significant factor in meeting the climate challenge," unquote. So this is why we are pursuing feminist leadership for climate justice. And I thank you all, and I'll be happy to share more facts and figures on why we are doing it and why it is important. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambreen. This was actually shocking. In fact, the numbers that you provided us, and I particularly kind of resonated with what it says, that, you know, with the quote that you mentioned, that you shared with us, is that now it needs to be, and it always needs to be human-centered. It's not just you know, about the planet. It's not just about the carbon emissions. It's not just about. It's not an inhuman or separate from human approach, but it needs to be human-centered. And I think that also that change in narrative also makes it related to us, and I think it makes it more imminent. The danger of what's happening today and the impact of it makes it more imminent. And it's not just, oh, carbon, it's something completely separate from us humans. So it's very, very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. I also want to share with you now our speakers. We're very happy to have them here. Actually, we have Angham Dayoub. She's a researcher in forestry and natural resource management. She's actually a very active member of the Association Qudwa and also New Women Connectors, and we're very happy to have her here. We have also Sifu Sani, coordinator of the youth constituency of the UN Committee on World Food Security. And also we have Pia Rebollo, Director of Environmental Affairs and Sustainability at the Pan American Caribbean Union for Human Rights. We're very happy to have you here. Thank you so much. I mean, the first thing is, and something that actually Anila mentioned, which is the COP27 and the gaps that we've seen in COP27 and the disconnect, I want to say, from the communities, in fact, that we witnessed there. I know that Angham was there. I'm not sure if Sifu and Pia were there, but I want to direct my question to Angham, is that, you know, you have attended COP27. I want to hear your reflections on what was there, what wasn't, who was represented, and perhaps maybe later we can ask you and everyone else, you know, what are the hopes and perhaps recommendations and expectations for COP28 to take it a bit further. So Angham, I'll leave it with you.
Thank you, Razan. Thank you, Anila, and nice to meet you, everyone. Yeah, I was in COP27 last year in Egypt. It was shocking, the lack of civil society representation. We noticed that they gave them a really hidden corner in one part, like of there was like 3 buildings, and the third one was there's a corner for civil society, was really small. The COP27 was named the African COP because it was in Africa, and was really focusing on more than on the loss and damage, which is the rich countries paying which are more responsible to the carbon emissions, paying money to the developing countries that are more affected by climate change. The focus was there more than anything else, and that was one of the criticism that this conference got, because instead of like concentrating on keeping the 1.5 degrees Celsius Paris Agreement alive, they talked more about the money relocating, and they said it was a historical agreement. But even if it's true, the money that was promised to be delivered by the Paris Agreement was never paid, or was really like partially paid. So we're not sure if they are on track on that. The representation of women was, I mean, among the 110 leaders, there was only 7 women. Was really low. Delegations, 40% women only. I had a chance to, for example, attend a few like presentations about women and climate change, and I was really surprised, for example, to see that in Africa, even when the funding is coming from the countries who's getting the money is men, women are not really asked about, I mean, even though in developing countries in agriculture force, women are 60% of the workforce in these countries. They don't almost own the lands, for example, less than 20%, I think, or so, I read. They don't have also the command or the they don't get to control what's going to happen to the land. All the funding are getting to women, and women are to men, sorry, and men are controlling all these resources. And this is a big problem, because women own a really important knowledge in nature, agriculture, saving seeds, and all of that. Women are really affected differently from men when it comes to climate change. For example, women are in Africa and developing countries like in Syria and Hasaka, for example, in the north, are the ones who go and who walk to get the water, for example. And sometimes they have to walk for long distances to get the water. With climate change, they have to walk more. Climate change is creating a lot of poverty also or exacerbating the already existing poverty in these countries when women need to even work harder in the agricultural lands. For example, going back to COP, yeah, this is where I really noticed that lack of representation, civil society, and also of women, and this 2022 was even less than 2018. 2018 was the year where there were like more women than this year. So instead of going up, we're going down, unfortunately. So all these issues are supposed to be addressed in COP 2024 in the UAE. Yeah.
So that's very interesting. Again, shocking figures. Actually, it's disheartening actually to hear that where it feels like we're going a little bit backwards rather than forwards, and the focus is actually being kind of shifted from what really matters to issues of obviously money and financial matters that
that's true.
It's very necessary. Obviously, it's very necessary, but it's probably not the best narrative to kind of focus on at the moment.
Curing the symptoms instead of curing the problem. That's what is happening, actually.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Anna, for this wrap up. This is really insightful, and I would love to hear from Sifu and Pia about your expectations of COP28. How do you see us? I don't know. How do you see us moving forward? What should the focus be for COP28? Sifu, perhaps we can start with you. I can see your face on my screen. and then we can go to Pia.
Yes. All right. Yeah, thank you. And I've listened very keenly to what the previous speaker, Angam, was speaking about. And of course, I resonate with what she's saying from COP27, where civil society really had a very, let me say, muffled voice. And civil society, and I being part of them, are the people who actually represent the voices on the ground, the women who are at the grassroots level. And even as the previous speaker was saying, and which I agree with, and I'm sure all of us here agree, is that women are actually biggest producers on the land. They are the food producers. They're the people who work. At least that is true from where I come from, Africa and in Kenya, that women are the ones who work on the land, who till on the land, who are the food producers. And climate change is an issue that affects us directly, and especially as grassroots women. Why? Because it affects our food system. So there can be no change for us without us. You know, somebody cannot be somewhere speaking for the people who are actually on the ground. The voices should be focused more on the people on the ground, on the women who are actually facing the issues of climate justice every day through the production of food, through food systems. And I think my recommendations for COP27, one is for civil society to be able to have a much more resolute voice, two, also to be part of policy, of the policy making, because these are the policies that actually, you know, come and affect us much later. For example, when we speak about indigenous knowledge of seeds, because these are some of the things that we need to start doing. And this indigenous knowledge is with the grass women. It's with, you know, the feminists. It's a way of education that is not passed in schools, but is passed, you know, from one person to another, or through oral literature, or even to that practice of farming. And of course, the issue of GMO, one of the biggest issues we had in my country was the legalization of GMO seeds. And earlier, I think the speaker who was giving an introduction on the statistics and figures was speaking about the issue of climate justice actually being a civic and political issue, which is, you know, true. And from where I stand and from where we stand, especially in my country, now this was an issue of you know, global inequalities or political factors, where we have some investors, for example, Monsanto, who come and say, we are going to give this amount of money to Kenya, but for that to happen, then you need to legalize these GMO seeds. You need to allow certain fertilizers which have been banned, for example, in Europe, but now they should be allowed in a place like Kenya or like Africa. And of course, these fertilizers have harmful chemicals, and these harmful chemicals, once they get into the soil, then the effects, you know, there's a domino effect of cancer, of so many other things. So for me, my recommendations, at least for the COP28, is to have more voices from the ground, and is to have you know, the grassroots and the women who actually take part in the food production and who are most affected, by the climate crisis. And also to mention that we're going to have a conference on climate in Kenya here in September, which also, I mean, the voice of civil society is not, you know, that much represented, because it's being, of course, arranged by the government, and you are expected to go in their way. So if there really should be change on climate in Africa, then we should have a multi-sectoral approach. This does not mean that we only have the grassroots women, no, but we can have the grassroots, and we can have the feminist leaders, and we can have the academia, and we can have the legislatures, for us to sit together. We can have the urban insecure, we can have the youth, we can have the fisherfolk, the pastoralists, for all these people to be in a table, and for us to be able to now surge the way forward together.
Thank you so much, Seifu. Multi-sectorial conference is a very interesting idea, because it does feel, you know, from what Anam said, I wasn't obviously from what you said, it feels like it's a very exclusive conference, and it's a very top down and they're making decisions, obviously, without us, that actually impact our everyday life. And I don't think there's that perspective in there. But even in terms of African, and I mentioned that it was like African COP, but it was in Sharm el-Sheikh, and it was in a what is considered like a very luxurious area, and next is going to be in UAE. I don't know how African was it. Do you think that it was an African COP? Was there proper representation there?
I don't want to bring in the issues of, because there's now political issues of North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, which yes, we get roped into. But of course, as you're talking, as you said, the truth is the truth and the reality is reality. This was a top-down, it was a top-down conference. For example, how many grassroots women would pay for air tickets or for a hotel? From what I know, the hotels that were nearest there, the prices were, it's not something, even the manner that it has been set is not to be able to accommodate, the voices from it's not a bottom-up, approach. Yeah, to say the least. I mean, we have, for example, in North Africa, migrant women, immigrants, for example, in Western Sahara, who've been there for over 40 years. And these people need to speak because they are affected by climate crisis. And having visited there, the temperatures, go very high, that you have to only do your activities between 6 and 10 a.m. And after that, you cannot do anything because the temperatures are very high. So you can imagine that these are the people who need to be sitting on the table because, one, they are already food insecure from wherever they are, but is this an area that is accessible in the first place to somebody like this? When you speak about the UAE, I'm like, I don't know if I would love to attend. And I'm like, okay, what are those statistics of, being able to get a seat at the table? So, yeah. And I think also with even having the COP in Egypt, the use of Africa was a use of name, really, like to say, okay, yes, there's this inclusivity, but in actual sense, there was none.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for your transparency, let's just say. And yeah, definitely, it does feel very, very exclusive. It doesn't feel very designed to be that inclusive of voices from the ground. So thank you. Hopefully this is what we're trying to do here. Pia, I'd love to hear from you if you wish to, comment on expectations and hopes, perhaps, for COP28. And also feel free to address any of the comments of the previous speakers. Love to hear from you as well, as someone from Latin America who's a bit disconnected from these couple of COPs at least. So I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and share this important space for us. And actually, I will try to address all the comments that the girls did before. And actually, about talking this topic specific of the countries and the economical system and everything. So this is go back to the Kyoto Agreement that it was expired before. So why do they have to talk about it? Because they should accept the responsibilities from the main countries or industrial countries about the quote and the responsibility before of the climate change. So this conversation have been started from before, when the Latin America has playing a big and huge role and struggling. I could say that because they should take a responsibility and address all their commitments, but paying, because everything is about the money. We have to be sure about it and we have to be clear about it. And while we are quite clear on it, then we can speak in the same language of them. This is something that I realized in this 13 years, like invest in the research I've done relative to the mining areas and the corporation. So what has happened is the climate change is between the human rights abuse and the wide operation of the corporate. So of course we should talk about the money. Because of the money we are in this crisis. And so what they did, it was like particular put the money into the vulnerable countries by the hands of their own, not their own, but the companies they have been hosting in their countries by the taxes and everything, and they have to like do something about it. And despite of it, I believe one of the representatives from one of those countries, I don't want to mention it, that I cannot, but they came up as well by some draft and text by supporting like fail and really dangerous like proposing to the other countries, such as Latin American countries, related to the what it was, geoengineering, which it means they could control the weather by the technology. So this is really, really massive gap, and that's why they are quite open and disconnected from the reality, because from the first war, they so call it in my region, it's made by the third world, which is including African countries, the African continent, and the Latin American, and any other countries that host the wide mineral resources. So this is more or less my point of view on like my approach. And yeah, it's too hard to see it, but everything is about the money. And despite that, the human rights are just going down in a paper.
That's, I mean, I agree to a certain point, but I think, I mean, this is what we're striving to do, right? Is because if it's just about the money, then it's just about the budget, and it's completely disconnected, and it'll fall through the priorities, right? Depending on the budgets and how they see it. But what if we change the narrative about it to be a human rights crisis, obviously, human rights violations, like you said, then perhaps it'll take top priority. I don't know how if that's going to happen, if we're going to continue the discussions in the way that they have been going so far, very disconnected from reality, like you were saying. You know, it's you know, about probably, yes, about white oppression as well, and you know, I guess developed countries trying to play God with you know, with controlling the weather rather than actually changing the culture of capitalism and you know, kind of corporate corruption, if you will, as you were saying. So I mean, I guess our answer to it and how we're trying to tackle it is through feminist leadership. And I think that also goes into, you know, my next question, to try to understand how you see feminist leadership in this context. Like, how would you define feminist leadership in this context? And we really want to also, I don't know if you want to tackle as well how also gender and obviously not only gender, all the spectrum, all the full spectrum of gender and you know, the different minorities, how they go into what it means to have feminist leadership, and also in general how that tackles climate change. But yeah, since the camera is on you, I don't know if you wish to add from your own point of view on what you feel feminist leadership in this context looks like.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, anything I said is from my point of view and the experience and expertise I have. So it's only one side of the whole frame. From my perspective, the feminist leadership is just bring the holistic approach to the solutions, as we see the lack of solutions by high amount of problems and crisis. As well, we can approach to the climate solution by consider social, cultural, economic dimensions, leading to more effective and sustainable outcomes. So that's why I'm honored to be here and bring it out.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah, so holistic approach to the multitude of problems that and the symptoms, right? Like you mentioned also, like they're the symptoms of a much deeper and very complex issue. And feminist leadership actually perhaps brings a holistic perspective into account, including gender perspective and including, the inclusion of minorities, etc. Umbreen, do you want to add before we go into the other speakers? Please go ahead.
I just wanted to add and build on what Pia mentioned very rightly and aptly, that feminist leadership is important. And I would just like to share that we have experienced and we have spoken to the communities, and we have seen that women are at the front lines when it comes to preparedness. Women are at the front line when it comes to adaptation, and women are at the front line when it comes to response. And like Anila mentioned, women are the ones who showed resilience at its height, at its best. So this is how I see why feminist leadership is important when it comes to climate justice in praxis.
Thank you, Umbreen. Thank you so much. And Seifu, would you like to maybe add your perspectives on why feminist leadership can actually offer an answer, I guess, to climate change?
Yes. Though I think even what I'm going to add has been said before, but as I was speaking earlier about the issue of indigenous knowledge, which is knowledge that we don't really find in the books, but it is passed down through oral literature, through practice, and especially through women, because the women are the educators. So of course, these are feminist leadership would be, the way to go. Why? Because there was a manner in which we know which seeds are resilient, which seeds to be planted between this and that time. Again, I will give an example of my region, because this is where I come from. And most of the people in my country, in Africa, in Kenya, are actually farmers, because agriculture makes about 70% of, what people do. And because of this, when we look at our past, this is the past before colonization, there was never a period of time where we were unable to feed ourselves, because there was that indigenous knowledge that we need to go back to, of course, coupled with the academia and etc. But this knowledge actually comes from the grassroots women and should be given a voice, such that we move away from what we know to be education and actually also tap into this as one of the means of education. Of course, also this brings about the issue of agroecology vis-a-vis the corporate agriculture or way of doing things. This is also, excuse me, agroecology is also part of the things that the feminists are very good at, the women, because it's something that they've been practicing for years, and I'm sure this would resonate across the globe with the women who actually do the farm work. Another thing that I would say would really help, and how feminist leadership can come in, is for women to actually be allowed to own land or to have the means of production, because they're the people who work most on the land, which I think I've said before. So what much better resolution can we have than the ownership of land by women, and also access to market? Because in most areas we find that, and I'll now bring in the issue of patriarchy, which comes in at least in my region, and I don't know about other regions, maybe they can give in their perspectives, that the women will work on the land, but they're only used as labor. When it's time for harvest, probably, the men are going to be the ones to take the food and to go sell it. And I mean, the money that is coming into the household, they will decide, what will be given to the woman, if anything at all. So the feminist leadership should ensure that women actually have access and can own the land in which they produce, not just the land, but access to markets for them to be able to distribute this food. And I think if we have women at the leadership and feminist leadership, as we're speaking about, probably the food crisis that the world is facing now would not, be occurring. So I think those are my points on what can feminist leadership do. And just also to add, another thing is to also have more women in leadership positions, political positions, to be able to make such decisions, and not just any other women, but women from the grassroots, to have support for these women to be able to have a seat at the table, to make decisions when it comes to policies from the ground up, beginning from leadership in the family, leadership in what is it called, leadership at, from the county levels and all the way up to whichever, all the levels that that we need to have women at the helm. I have one more point. Oh yes, and also a human rights approach to the issue of climate. And this is part of feminist leadership. When I talk about this, I want to bring in also an issue of domestic care, which is at the heart of what women do. So women who are the biggest food producers, and they take care of the food systems, also have this burden of domestic care, which, you know, is not seen as a burden. So if we have a way to regulate, you know, such things as domestic care and bring it to the table so that it's not just a woman issue, then this is part of the feminist leadership that we are talking about on how, you know, we can have more climate justice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sifu. This was very obviously insightful, you know, from the indigenous knowledge to actually women's rights within this, and how actually contributing to women's rights can actually contribute to the solution to climate change. This is, you know, absolutely fascinating, and it is at the heart of the feminist leadership that we envision for climate change. I would love to hear from Pia, because you raised your hand, and then we can go to Angam, and then finally Anila, and then we can kind of close this off. Pia, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I just loved what she said, because it's really clear. And I just want to add something, because I believe we are kind of building step by step the gap, closing the gaps, and bringing bridge between each other in the cultural approach. So as well as a part of myself, we have as well cultural engagement. So I'm not come from like a root of indigenous people, but because of we are connected still from the exile or out of our countries, we are connected to our land and to our people, and we keep those connections. So for myself, I have 5 years out, and I was kind of dying, but I found a way. I found again the path to go back and to bring it with me. And yeah, it's like this deep connection with the local ecosystem, and bring out the traditional values that coming and the knowledge from those indigenous community. For me, it's really important, because we are still on time to learn about how do they live before all these tragedies occur. And yeah, so we can say that they've been succeed, because they was here for a long time before all this industrial system has been taking the place of everybody. And of course, they will bring some like climate initiative solutions, so clear, pointed, and I'm sure it's gonna work, and we could change it in a matter of 10 years or 20, so as long.
Thank you so much, Pia. Yeah, I like that you were able to find your roots again, and to plant your roots again in your new home. But those roots actually come from your hometown, right? Like from your home or from your original ground. I really like that. That's very interesting. I really want to comment on that a little bit later. I just want to hear from Anram. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think about what they said? I'm actually getting very emotional, but
Me too.
please share what your thoughts are, and then we can go to Anila, but love to hear from you.
I'm enjoying so much what has been said, and I'm surprised to see how familiar the context of Africa and Syria are. For example, if you want to look at the agricultural, for example, the women that work in agriculture in Syria, they've been, not only agriculture, women in general, they've been holding this knowledge for many years. They helped in saving the seeds of a lot of important crops. But at the same time, even though they are more than 60% of the workforce, they don't, own the lands. They don't own the money. Even they work, they get paid less than men, and their contracts are verbal. So there's nothing that can protect them per se. So I think the feminist leadership is important because it promotes inclusive rights for everyone, not only for women, but vulnerable people also. The feminist movement and the global justice or environmental justice movements are really similar. They share a lot of, in the end, human rights values. So this ecofeminist approach as well, this approach thinks about the use of nature and women as one. So in some societies women are treated badly, they say that there's correlation between treating women badly and treating the nature as well badly. This is the root of ecofeminism. I think it's important to the feminist leadership to conserve all these knowledges that we talked about and use it, because if we don't use it, what's the point? It's going to disappear. And also that we need to challenge the power structures, that they are also controlling all the means of production, all the legislations, for example. In the end, we need to have sustainable use of nature that can also, as I said, use the knowledge that women do, and also recognize that women are also having different impacts from climate change than men, the impacts that we already addressed, and that poverty and climate change are causing the gap between women and men. Poverty is causing women to leave schools, to go to work in agriculture. The violence, domestic violence in houses also has increased. Their studies that they increased because of climate change. The climate migration is also a problem. So I think the feminist approach can help preserve the women knowledge, be more inclusive, change the policies, and get more sustainable use of nature, and preserve women's rights when it comes to climate change and other challenges and everywhere in the world.
Thank you so much, Anram. Yeah, I love what you said, that, you know, there's a lot of commonalities between the context in Africa, in Latin America, in Syria, in Asia, in South Asia, or what is called the global South, between brackets. And I think it gives it a little bit of hope that, yes, there are common, there are commonalities, there are common knowledge that, women and other minorities actually have, that might have the clue, might have the key to climate change. But what's happening, or what's kind of impeding this is basically not moving towards feminist leadership and not actually recognizing this knowledge as valuable knowledge in the creation of the solutions. And I also loved what everyone said, actually, is about, how our past holds the key to our future. And I found that absolutely fascinating, that perhaps we do need to take a few steps back and revisit, the past knowledge and how we did things in the past, in order for us to actually preserve our species' future. And that knowledge is embedded within the women of our culture, and it's absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much, everyone. I want to leave it with Anila. I think we're kind of like maybe perhaps finalizing, but Anila, I'd love to hear from you. Not only about feminist leadership, but also like, I also want to hear how feminist leadership is not only for women. I don't know how, if you can actually shed a light on that, because we know from New Women Connectors, it's always about, you know, women's rights or gender-based violence, but it's actually a lot bigger than that and a lot wider than that. But so I'd love to hear from you on your view on what feminist leadership for climate change in particular. Nila?
Thank you, Razan, and everyone for sharing your thoughts and your input. For us, is in our experience, being involved on a global and different regional level, we saw for us it's very important when we are advocating for women's rights. It does not mean we are advocating only for women. We're really advocating for those who have less power, less privilege, who has less visibility and less information, even information of the resources. So that's why we are advocating based on our own experience. We are expressing, when we are sharing our stories, our lived experience, we are actually highlighting the gaps which are making us as a vulnerable. We always used to say system is broken, let's fix it. But in our experience, we thought, no, system is actually not broken. There's no system. System is make only to benefit direct who has already the power. So that's why we're advocating for systematic change. We are advocating, we really need to address the root causes. Why we are trying to be advocating and giving the confidence and tools and this practical knowledge to our communities. They feel confident and belonging to this domain, because this global domain as COP28 and so on, they are so much discussion happening without communities. Like there are so many initiatives like green energy, clean cooking, resourcing, different carbon emission project. But if we go to the community, we saw they are not impactful. That's why feminist approach is trying to help, instead of reinventing wheel, how we can use what is already on the ground. As Anham and Pia and my other friends just say, how we utilize and take knowledge of these communities as powerful knowledge, and how we can give them regard, and instead of coming up Western approach, how we can create inclusive visibility to existing community knowledges. Because we really need to learn our failure, which we had in our previous years of last century and early century of this of colonization. We shouldn't and we can't ignore those impact, how colonial approach dominate and control everything when it's come to resources. So we really need to come together. That's why I'm super happy to hear from all my friends from 3 region, from Africa, Latin America, and from MENA, and how we are trying to bring everyone. Maybe they are speaking Spanish, Arabic, Farsi, Urdu, whatever, but they are saying the same. Like, we are the people, we really need our voices. That's why I'm taking this call to action by using this and summarizing. We are looking for our partners. We really need your support. We really need your resources and your help. We are here to commit what we really want to challenge by using our approach and our network. So please reach out to us. We are planning our further discussion of coffee tables. We are planning to have one more big conference in upcoming months before COP, where we will also invite the government's representative, the policymaker representative, and we are trying our best to bring some COP28 responsible person who are designing this to create before COP, how we can preparing for this discussion. So thank you so much. Stay connected, go to our website. And if you have any question, reach out to us. And thanks to all our network members and the panelists who are contributing without any financial resources. And we really are trying to showcase how we community leaders, feminist leaders, we are coming together, because there's shouldn't be a future which is not being meant to us. So thank you so much. Have a lovely weekend and stay connected. Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Hopefully we'll hear from you soon, and hopefully, yes, like Anita said, we'll stay connected. And please stay tuned on our newest updates. We'll be updating our website and our social media as well. Thank you so much, Pia, Sifu, Angham, Amreen, Anila, and have a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.